I'm Larissa Norris. I'm one of the staff of the Council for Professional Recognition, and I wanted to talk today a little bit about stress awareness since it is National Stress Awareness Month. And I have a special guest to talk all about stress within the ECE work environment. And my guest is named Jonathan Faircloth, and you can come on up. He's been in the industry for He's been in the industry for 15 years. He's done everything from being an assistant teacher. He's been a consultant. He's owned his own child care center, as well as now currently being a center director. And I wanted to talk to Jonathan because I actually saw a post of his recently. We are friends through the theater.
Yes, yes.
I saw a post of his lately expressing his stress, and I thought this would be a really good person to talk to about the fact that it is Stress Awareness Month, what you do with your own teachers when they're feeling stressed, but also some of the stressors that you're experiencing within the industry. And part of that, spoiler alert, is being a man within the industry.
Yes.
So first, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Oh, and fun fact, Jonathan got his CDA in 2017. So
Yay!
he's also CDA holder. Yes.
Yes.
First question is, so we all know the pandemic was a stressful time.
Yes.
But since things have kind of come back to normal, are we seeing different stressors, or are we still seeing stressors that are resulting from the pandemic right now in the industry?
I would say we're certainly seeing stressors from the pandemic. I think many schools can relate. Staffing has been an issue since the pandemic. Even the needs of children have been certainly a stressor for many since the pandemic. And not that schools do not want to assist these children that have these specific needs, but more so the support and how to do it. But then at the same time, you don't have enough staff to try to do these things. So yeah, the pandemic, though it's somewhat over for the early childhood field, it's still the effects are still there, definitely.
Still wreaking some havoc, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So one of the things that, we've seen so many articles about, especially the staffing issue right now. Can you give me a better sense of what you think is causing the staffing issue, and whether it's local issues or if it's like just nationwide, worldwide?
Larissa, honestly, it is something I am still trying to figure out. I will say that at the center that I am at now, we are staffed correctly, but that is because this is a new, praise God, but that's because it is a new center. So we have the right amount of staff for what we need right now. But at a center that I was at during the pandemic, it was kind of a challenge. And I could not wrap my head around it. I would have scenarios where I would have wonderful interviews with people, and we would go through the hiring process, and then all of a sudden they would just disappear. And I would try to call, email, give them a little bit of time just to because I was like, well, maybe they're having second thoughts. So I'll give them a few days to process and make sure this is what they really want to do. I understand that there are other factors within COVID that could have them nervous. And I would reach back out again, and it would be nothing. So I still can't grasp what it is.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you've got the interesting element of people's own lives. We actually have had some experts talk to us about trauma and trauma-informed care, and then also just the ACEs that you bring in to the classroom, not just what the children are experiencing, but how your own experiences affect your work and your children. So how do you support your teachers when they're feeling stressed?
I try to make it a regular thing, and I received this when I was a teacher from a former boss. And one thing that she would do is she would call us in just to check on us, and it would be so random. And there'd be a few times she would call me, and I'm like, "What I did wrong?" And after a while, I realized, no, it's not that you did anything wrong. She just cares about you, and she wants to make sure that you're okay. So I make it a point to talk to staff just to make sure they're okay. Sometimes it's bringing them in the office, but sometimes, I may stop by their classroom and just say, hey, everything all right? And truly mean it. Truly mean it. And the only thing that is behind it is I want to make sure you're okay because your mental health is priority versus I want to make sure you're okay because I don't want you to quit tomorrow, right? And teachers, they can sense those type of things.
Yes.
So I definitely make sure to really just check on them, make sure that they're doing okay. And if they're not, and if it's something that they want to talk to me about, being there, being that listening ear, doesn't mean they always want your opinion or your advice. They just may need that listening ear. So I definitely try to do that for all my staff.
Do you ever have any wellness activities for the staff, or do you ever like send out resources for them as far as like what they could do to like self-care?
So, this is something that I have not tapped into. However, it is something that I've been thinking about, definitely, of sending and also having people come in to talk to the staff as well. But I have not tapped into that just yet. But at my new school,
Not like you have
new,
anything else to do.
I know. So, I'm like, new staff, new chapter, let's try something new. But I definitely want to have outside resources come in and talk to the staff because it's something that I can probably receive as well that can help me with my day to day. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And speaking of you, let's talk a little bit about your experience because, this whole interview stemmed from hearing that you were having trouble in the industry because
Yeah.
you are a man and not everybody is accepting of that. Can you
Yes.
talk about that?
Absolutely. I have been fortunate to work at some really great centers under some wonderful leadership. And I have had the opportunity to have wonderful parents. But I must be honest and say that I've also had the other side of the stick as well. And, as a male in the industry, it's hard. It can be very hard. There's so much that happens in the world. So many negative things that happen at childcare industries. And I understand the fear that parents have. I guess what I don't understand is why that fear always comes about mostly if there is a male presence in the classroom. I think that is what always throws me off. And I feel like in my career so much, I naturally always want to go the extra mile. But sometimes I go way above and beyond to the point where I've exhausted myself, but I'm doing that more so to impress that parent and let that parent know that that person that you saw on that news report, I'm not him. And sometimes I just think, and I'm like, well, if my female counterpart, I mean, does she have to do that? And a lot of the time, my female counterparts, they don't. So it gets very hard, and you get to a point where you just get very frustrated. You get very, very frustrated because sometimes and I've experienced where I've done all of this and sometimes it still isn't enough. And it's like, well, what do you do?
Right, right. What do you do? I mean, the fact that you're trying to prove yourself extra when you've
Hmm.
already been background checked, you've already gotten the job, you've done all of the training, you've gotten your CDA,
Right.
what do you need to do more?
Hmm.
But it is, I think there's cultural differences,
Yes.
and it's not even just within cultures from other countries, it's cultural differences within this country.
Right. Hmm.
Like some people just don't understand men wanting to take care of children,
Right. Hmm.
which is unfortunate, right?
Yes.
Yes, we work so hard for
Hmm.
equity. We work so hard in this field to represent all the students that are present,
Right.
and learn about other cultures, but then what's happening at home and what is brought with them to the center is not
Yes.
something that you can control.
Right.
So
Exactly.
as the director, much
Hmm.
less, how do you handle it?
Oh my goodness. Pray, right? But I certainly try to put myself in their shoes, and I remind myself that this is not always. This is because they've just met me. And again, media influences people, right? I think from COVID, we can tell there's a lot of influence, right? So I have to, I try to remember all of those things and give them the opportunity to open up. to this new way to them. Make sure that I am present and I'm there to answer any questions that they have and allow them to feel comfortable enough to be transparent. Because I've had a few parents that it was so new. They're like, we have never seen a male director, a lead teacher, assistant teacher. I don't know how to feel about this. And I gave them the floor. I said, tell me what your concerns are. And they shared them and it was a beautiful dialogue between us. And after that, it still took some time, a few months for them to see, how it would go. But once they got to see it, they were like, okay, all right, this is okay. This is normal, you know? So practicing that, being open, making those parents feel comfortable to be as transparent as possible, to express their feelings about the matter, it truly does help. But then there are some families that it doesn't, and I'm still learning how you navigate that. One thing I do know is you continue to do your job and you continue to do your best because your staff are counting on you and the children are counting on you. So that's one thing while I'm working through this new phase of, okay, those folks that are not shifting that logic and they're like, nope, men shouldn't be over here. You got to make sure you give those kids and the staff the best, and you can put that to the side for now.
It's interesting because on your post, we had another friend who also is a male in this industry, who's I believe he's working towards becoming a lead teacher, or he just became a lead teacher, and he said the same thing. So it's not a solo incident here.
Yeah.
Right. Do you have any are there resources out there for men in this industry?
You know what? The only thing that I have seen, and it could be because I wasn't digging enough, but the only thing that I can see is there was a group, and I wish that I could remember their name, but they were actually doing essentially like a mini conference, and it was for males in early childhood. And like I said, the name completely leaves me, and I was not able to make it. And I was bummed because I was like, I really would like to be a part of that. But if more organizations would do something like that, so there are those resources for men in this field, because I think women are very important to this field, but also men are very important to this field as well. And we come together and we change these children's lives. They say what it takes a village to raise a child. So, but I do think more resources need to be put out there for both parties on when we have these parents that have these views, how do we address them? And what resources can we get to those parents as well? Because sometimes it's literally, like you said, it could be a big cultural difference. And then other times they just don't know. They've just seen one way of it being done, and that's what they're used to.
Correct. Now,
Yeah.
I must say I would be remiss if I didn't mention our CEO, Dr. Moore's book in this moment, because he actually has a book called Men Do Stay: Recruiting and Retaining Qualified Male Early Childhood Teachers. That could be a great resource for you. But, it's something we need to think about here at the council, and maybe we need to think about creating a community within CAN for anybody who has anything to do with the council can join this platform. Maybe we need to think about joining having a men's community.
Absolutely. I think it'd be very beneficial. Yeah.
And or even just not just a men's community, maybe just a community about men so that women can understand and know how to support as well too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've been very fortunate to have my female coworkers. They've always been so supportive. So supportive. I started out in the twos classroom, and I remember that was my first job ever in early childhood, and I didn't have my CDA or anything just yet, and I was assistant teacher. And I remember going into the classroom, and my teacher, the elite teacher, name was Polly, and my boss had told me, "Look, if you can handle the twos, you can handle anything." And I kind of was like, I don't know about that, but okay. And I went in there, and I remember there was a child who had an accident. And so I was looking at the two, Polly and my other coworker, like, okay, so who's changing them? And Polly said, oh, you are. And I remember I just had this fear in my eyes. And she was like, what's wrong? Do you not know how to change a diaper? And I was like, no, I do. And she was like, okay, go ahead. Change the tables right there. Go ahead. And I was like, okay. And so I knew how to do it, and I changed the child. And she was like, yeah, You're fine. She was like, you're a part of this classroom. Everything that we do, you can do too. Don't worry about it. And I just and they were supportive the whole time.
And sometimes you do need that person to like validate for you, right?
Yes.
Yes. And I think validation is maybe missing in this industry in general, especially with the communication between the parents and
Yes.
the teachers. I think there's a big misunderstanding as to what we do, what we're doing for your children
Yes.
on the daily, like
Mm-hmm.
this is reaching milestones. This is developing them. This is not just watching them, right?
Right.
So if we educate people more
Mm-hmm.
in our local circles and then into the larger circles, what we can get done, you know what I mean?
I
So
agree.
yeah, but at the same time, that can add stress, which we don't want to do
Right.
because we shouldn't be the only ones fighting to get the word out, right?
Right. I agree.
So
I
yeah,
100% agree. I do.
interesting.
Yeah, it really is. It's very and I since there's been a lot of transition amongst my career. And I will say that definitely from the start of COVID to now is where I've really felt that brunt of, you're the man in early childhood. Well, you shouldn't be doing this because and I've noticed that a lot of owners, and not where I am currently are very supportive, and they're like, you are the leader of the pack. And yes, you are expected to do these things because the teachers are looking up to you. So if you can't do it, then how do you expect them to be able to follow? But in other environments that I've been in, it's always been, well, diapering is the biggest thing, right? And we don't want to have the males do diapering because it can be a legal thing if the parent makes an assumption, and we don't want to put you in jeopardy. That's the most common thing that I've heard when it comes to certain things. We don't want you to be left alone with a child, when you get close to the end of the day. We don't want you to be left alone with a child. We want to make sure there's a second person in that room because, again, we don't want this to be a legal thing. The parent says that the child said that you did this and you really didn't. That those are the most common things that I've heard.
And it's for your protection, but it's for their protection too, but it's not fair. It's not
Right.
equitable. It's
No.
not fair to the child even, because if that child needs to be changed and there's no one else around, they need to be changed.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
They have to be
So
changed. Yeah.
it brings up a lot of really interesting points and some ideas of work that we need to do still
Hmm.
in this industry. But I just wanted to talk to you because I thought you had a unique perspective on not just stress, but reasons for stress in this industry. So I will say thank you so much for your time. I really hope things start and continue to get better.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that maybe the council can be a part of that, right?
We
That
would
we
love that.
can, but I wanted to highlight you today. So thank you,
Thank
Jonathan
you.
Faircloth, for being with
Thank you so
me
much.
and being such a wonderful role model within this industry.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be able to speak to you. So I truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, everybody, for watching, and we'll be back with another interview sometime soon.